Hey, it's Anthony and Tucker from Land Title. We wanted to bring you our Boulder County market update for the month. This is our lender update where we give you all of the local knowledge you need to really help advise your clients. So let's get right into it.
So what we're kind of seeing right now is obviously we saw the rising inventories that we expected. Now it didn't have this high of an increase as we thought we might have, as we saw earlier in the year when we look at July. And then also when we're looking over the average sold price, as we can see month over month is down. But then the important thing to really notice is our trailing 12 months that we'll bring up later is actually showing a positive number. So it's not that the world is falling. We're just going to kind of put some things into perspective. And then also if you look at our under contracts, they're down less than our solds. So that means the market's going to start flattening out a little bit here. We're not going to keep going on a negative trajectory, and if we are, it's going to really mellow out on that curve. And that's basically because we have more stuff under contract than what was sold.
All right, so let's take a look at the active units here for kind of our submarkets, right? I mean, this is the same slide you just saw, but it's just pulling out actives, but there's a lot of changes happening in some of those areas, right? I mean, if you look at this, look at Longmont, 242 active units, Boulder's at 290. I mean, we're really starting to see that rise in some of these markets, but then you have other places like, well, Niwot showing extreme changes, but it went up by 5 units from the month before, right? So we really kind of need to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. The one thing that I think is worth pointing out, look at Erie. 108 units on Erie, but that's down 12%.
That is a great area right now. And
super strange, right?
A lot of activity going on in Erie. We're seeing a lot of contracts come there, and we're seeing a lot more also
we're seeing more solds in Erie, kind of inversely to the rest of the county, right? Superior's sitting here at 61 units active on the market, but it's having like a very small number of sales, and you have Erie where like over half of those are selling every month right now. It's had a ton of pent up demand, and it's just a really strange dynamic, right? All these submarkets are changing at different paces. Eventually, enough inventory will rise. They'll all be back on kind of the same trajectory.
So let's keep in our minds that Longmont's just about 240 active units and Boulder County is 290, because we're going to be referencing that later on when we start looking at some of the average sales prices and solds. And this is really a great sign for your buyers, right? There's more inventory, they can go shopping, they have time to get loans done, they have time to get appraisals done, inspections.
Yep.
Hopefully this is making your lives a lot easier as well with this increase in activity.
All right, so let's take a look at the month supply. Month supply, a balanced market is that 4 to 6 months range. I'd really argue 4 months, but at the same time, it gives us kind of a bearing on where are we, right? I mean, we were at 1 to 2 weeks worth of inventory earlier this year. It was the most extreme seller's market we'd ever seen. Here we are, we're reaching 2 months of inventory, right? Things are really starting to rise, but also this isn't crazy at all, right? I mean, we've seen this countless times over and over again. Actually, almost every market in the history of Boulder County is over 2 months of inventory. So,
and we're following the normal trajectory, right? Yeah. Now look at this nice little bell here. Last year was a little funny. 2020, just throw it out of the books. But this is the normal curvature that we like to see. Hey, things pick up as inventory shortens right in that first quarter of the year, and was that late winter, early spring, starts rising as more inventory comes on. We're now kind of coming up to that peak, and then we'll probably start dropping off a little bit again as less homes hit the market and the current ones start getting sold.
I think what you have to remember is the peak amount of listings coming to market are from March through October. So buyers don't really change a ton of their patterns unless there's things like interest rate rises or whatever. So as buyers kind of enter the market or leave the market, that's what's driving a lot of this change right now. But the seasonality is all due to listings, right? So the most listings come on in June really, and that wasn't any different this year. So with that influx in listings starting to slow down, you're gonna see inventory drop again at some point this year. I think that's really important to kind of reiterate that to buyers, right? They got to get out and get active and still get stuff under contract now, why things are looking really good.
Because we'll still see here in a little bit that, well, actually, we'll get there in a moment. Let's go ahead and jump forward.
All right, so here's our days in MLS.
All right, so this is where I wanted to touch base. We're still at 17 days in the MLS on average for detached and attached. That is still really short. That's only not even 2.5 weeks. So it's still a really fast-paced market for the right inventory that's priced right. That's where we're seeing some houses are sitting out there is based on those pricings. So when you're working with your folks, they have a lot more options, and they need to know, hey, if this is the house, we need to be aggressive still. Because there's other people who are aggressive in the market.
Right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Look at this. Look at Longmont. It's got 11 days in the MLS still.
Same with Lafayette. Lafayette and Louisville are still really hot right now. They're just under 13 days. So they're still much hotter than if we look at Boulder, where, obviously the price is a little bit higher, we have a little bit more inventory, things are dragging a little bit in comparison to the rest of the county.
I think where you put it in perspective, though, we're talking 2 weeks, not even 3 weeks. In Boulder, we're still talking 3 weeks in the MLS. Like, this is an awesome seller's market still. It just happens to be we have a little bit reduced buyers. A lot of buyers seem like they're really coming back into the market, though. So it's just a different time. Like, the real estate market changes every year. We're just trying to adapt and understand those changes as they occur.
I think really what we're going to see is what happens in August is going to tell us what's going to happen for the rest of the year, especially as kids go back to school, families are back in town, people are back from their vacations. We'll probably see what August is really going to tell us what's going to happen the rest of the year, I believe.
I do too. Well, let's go over to our price point, because I think the our price point ones here are the ones that are really going to give us an indication of what's changing. So, Tucker, what's going on here in the month supply of inventory and days on market for detached?
Well, let's first look at luxury. Luxury actually has quite a bit of supply. Now, the days on market is still fairly short, 24 days to get under contract. Oh, that's for a detached, perfect. So it's still moving pretty darn fast for luxury, but we actually have a lot of supply. And we're starting to see it finally slow down a little bit in the luxury side, because it's been really chugging along for the last couple months. While the rest of the market shifted faster, the luxury market's finally starting to move a little bit and get a little bit less competitive. But one thing to note here is look at that $2 million to $2.5 million. That's still insanely hot. That price point is just on fire. Look at that, 6 days in the MLS.
I mean, this tells me one thing. We have 3 months of inventory, but they're going under contract in 6 days. That tells me if your clients are trading into some other product, they really need to make sure they're listing aggressively on price, and it needs to be buttoned up and perfect. Because if it is buttoned up and perfect, it moves in 6 days, and that's unbelievable, right? But if not, you don't want to be one of those listings sitting there. So I think as you're working with those buyers, really just help prep them for, like, you got to do the sale right so we can get you into something, and you're probably not going to get a $2 to $2.5 million home contingent unless it's been sitting on the market for a while, right? So there is a lot of opportunity here. We're just trying to help unbutton some of that. I think the big thing too is, remember, the month supply is going to be at its least somewhere around that 400,000 mark, right? So those are so tight, they're so competitive, but as they go up in price point, now we're back into one of those markets where there's a lot of trade-up value there, right? There's a lot of potential to be able to sell on your terms and buy maybe in more favorable terms again. And we haven't seen this since 2020. So that's a really, really good sign.
And so in that trade-up opportunity, you can make a marginally larger percentage on the lower on your current home sale as you're trading up, and then use that equity to go down. Right now, really work with some agents on those trade-ups, because you can actually do that now. All those folks who are saying, oh, I got to sell to buy, sell to buy, sell to buy, start re-engaging with them, because this is where you can actually add some value to them.
All right, so look at this. This is one that we've been talking a lot about. We've been seeing a lot going on here. This is the attached side of the equation, and we've been telling you it's been hyper competitive, it's ultra competitive. Well, you're really seeing that from that days on market side. Look at that 800 to a million. They're still going under contract in 7 days, right? Yes, there's some inventory there, and they're rising 2.5 months, but this has been a really different situation in attached versus detached this year. So one thing I think you really need to understand here is, are they trading up into some luxury stuff? There's probably some serious potential there. If they're trying to get out of a product, it's pretty even with detached if you're in the lower price ranges, right?
And that's really, that's entry level. That's how you get started. That's where you get your first spot. So that's where, those first timers, make sure you help them understand what they need to do for attached, what your rules are, what the condos issues are, all that fun stuff that you're the expert in. Make sure you remind them, so when they're out shopping in the attached market, they know what hurdles are going to have to go across to get there.
All right, so we got a couple of other things we wanted to touch on. We want to touch on solds, we want to touch on average sales price, and then of course the elephant in the room, that bidding war situation. So what's happening here?
So this right here, this is what I mentioned earlier. Hey, remember that Boulder County is around 280 and Longmont was at 240 for active inventory.
Okay, so 240. Here's how many solds there were.
They're selling over half their inventory each month. So it's still turning over quite quickly.
And there's
Boulder County's still turning pretty well, but not as quick. And that's really important to remember, is because the high quality product is moving fast. They still need to be aggressive.
Look at this. This is Erie right here. Erie's at 70 units sold, 100 on the market. I mean, there are more solds taking place in Erie than there were this time last year in many ways, right? Over the last 12 months, it was really dramatically reduced. We were really kind of hindered in that January, February timeframe. But look at this year-over-year changes. I mean, some of these markets, the year-over-year numbers are way different than other markets. Erie's only down 6%, but look at somewhere like Louisville, 60%. Now you got Marshall Fires in there. You got a lot of stuff going into that market, but certain markets, big swings. Other markets like Erie, they have been way undersold for a long time, and they're really playing catch up at this point.
So especially if what does that mean when one market's moving faster than another? Well, if your clients are moving from Erie to a Longmont, a little less competitive, or it's going to be a little harder. If they're moving to a Boulder, hey, they have a little bit more opportunity. That's your trade-ups. That's where you can go, hey, moving from one area of Boulder County to another, you have more opportunity.
Absolutely.
So you can cash out on the higher competition in those areas.
All right, so let's take a look at average sales price. And this is a hard one to unbutton because we were talking about this a little while ago and we're like, well, how do we explain that sometimes that month over month shift down is not really that indicative of what's happening in the market, right? Because over the last 12 months, we've had a 14% rise in sales price. This market is genuinely getting more expensive. We're seeing some real appreciation and we're seeing it at different rates within the submarkets, but not that extreme, right? The lowest being 7.5% in Longmont. You can see that number right here over the last 12 months. But the highest percentages, I mean, if you discount Niwot, we're really looking at like Louisville.
And this is where you can talk to your folks saying, hey, I've been in this house for a couple of years. How much did my house appreciate last year? These are this TTM percent change. These are the numbers you really want to be able to save. If you're in Erie, you had 17% equity increase. Lafayette 20. Louisville 22, Boulder 17. Those are the numbers you can actually talk real with, because this is showing over the last 12 months to the 13 to 24 months away, how much has it actually changed. So it's really averaging out the curve and the seasonality and saying, because if we're looking at this, see that giant drop off, think the sky is falling. Oh my gosh, we've lost all the equity we gained over the last couple of years. Well, that's not true.
$128,000 worth, right? It seems like crazy, but the truth is that's not actually what happened.
And
I think the other part of this, we were talking about this before we got on here, but what I really think is important to understand too is the type of home that sells in a spring market versus the type of home that sells in like a summer or fall market or winter market. So a lot of times, when do families move? Families move when it's convenient for families to move. So if we're getting into July, people pulled back a little bit, maybe a month or two early this year. The peak of the market was actually April, not June, like we would see normally. I think you had a lot of those families pull the trigger early, March, April, May, and now we're seeing that pullback where like families, kind of take a more conservative approach. The bigger homes aren't selling, so that means the higher priced homes aren't selling as quickly either. And you're seeing that in a lot of markets, right? We're seeing that in Superior. The only place we're not seeing that is in Erie, because who knows what's going on. There's just a lot of pent-up demand there. But
when they actually have supply.
Exactly.
They finally have supply too.
So, and then that being said, you have less sales comparatively in Boulder than you have in some of the submarkets. So that's also going to drive the average price down, right? So even though we're seeing really competitive sales in all these marketplaces, it's one of those that really needs to be unpackaged a little bit. So good luck explaining that to your buyers, but we're happy to help, and we can get you the submarket data to do that. All right, last slide. This is the important one. Well, first, actually, we have two more slides. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, definitely. So we're down year to date on sales, about 20%. We think this is going to kind of continue throughout the rest of the year. I'm really hoping we're going to have some legs. August is really going to tell us what's going on, and if the market picks back up when everyone's back in town, even with school starting. And I know a lot of folks will have their lives back when their kids go off to school, this guy in particular. But that's where we're down 20%. But remember, we're still comparing that to one of the best years we've ever had. So as folks panic going, should I buy? Is this a bad market to buy in? If I buy, am I going to lose equity? Am I going to go underwater? All of those major concerns, you just need to bring it back into historical knowledge of saying, hey, we went off into the best year we've ever had up here in the screen, best year we've ever had. Now we're just back to eye level. And it's still a decent year. This is not a bad year at all in real estate. It's just how fast the changes were is what really drove a lot of those conversations in fear.
Well, and I think one of the comparisons is look at the best years we had in real estate pre-COVID, right? 2017, 2018. I mean, these were some banner years in sales. We're basically right back in that realm. So discounting the fact that, we had 2 years of complete high turnover, people panicking that they weren't in the right home, they spent too much time there, and now they're back to reality of like, Boulder's only going to turn over at 2% a year, right? So we're back to these more normalized numbers, and I think that's where we're going to feel. So this might be our new normal again for a while. Everyone's been using the new normal phrase, but honestly 2022 really is starting to feel that way in the real estate market.
All right, and the most important, well, not necessarily the most important, but we love to look at, this is for detached single-family homes. Anthony, what is happening on the list to sale price?
All right, so list to sale price is just under 100% for our detached homes the first time in a long time, right? I mean, it's been over a year. So the cool part about this is we talked about how the market's gonna curve a little early, right? We're a couple of months early into this. I think what we're gonna see is more of like a fall feeling market for the rest of the year, because it's starting to get under 100%. It's going to flatten out really quick, just like you see here in the data. We see it every year in the fall where it really starts to level out. That doesn't mean that this is going to be a buyer's market, right? Like, this is a seller's market. We're short on inventory still, just not as short. We're not going to see huge bidding wars for 200,000 or 300,000 over asking price very often. Obviously, we still hear about some, but we're getting back into reality. The thing is, some of these markets are not moving at the same pace. Look at this 2 to 2.5 million number, 103% listed sale price. There are still bidding wars kind of moving into some of these markets. Of course, where it's hyper competitive, you're going to see that bidding war still take place. But we're not talking unreasonable bidding wars, right? We're talking about 1% over asking
These
price.
are people 5 months ago who are willing to spend,
100,000 over asking.
100,000, or let's say put in percents, maybe 10% over asking.
12%.
Now they're going a couple percent over, and they're still getting into the same product for the price they want.
This is that one for you guys as a lender to help them understand. You're not going to get a deal, but you can absolutely get in. If you can get it at asking price, you can get it, asking price with an inspection even, right? That's kind of what we're feeling again. These numbers have really shown us that.
And then one thing to note on those inspections is, remember, when you're working with your folks on seller credits, work with the agent on what you can do with those seller credits, because we've been hearing that come up again, of folks going, well, I got a $20,000 seller credit, but I can't use it. I don't know what to do with it. I'm literally leaving money on the table.
Yeah, they don't want to do that.
So let's don't forget about those seller credits. As you guys know better than we do.
Yes,
Let's make sure we talk with the agents on, hey, how can we add those in? Talk to your closers. If you need creative ideas, give me a buzz. I got a few of them in my pocket.
Okay, I wanted to show you this too. So this is the attached market. We're at 100.7% list sale price. We're still in a little bit of bidding wars here in the attached market. It's taking a couple more months for the attached market to feel the same compression that the detached market has. But the big thing is, look at these. From 600 to a million, we're still at 102% listed sale price. There's still a lot of bidding wars there. This is a really desirable market right now. So I think helping people understand that they're not all apples to apples, and
that's
this
because
is really going to
the
give
bang
people,
for your buck is a lot higher than your detached, right? Your detached, you have the space, you have the whole house, you have so much more possibility. On the attached market, you're getting a lot nicer unit, a lot more
$1 million
finishes,
is getting you a lot more for your money.
A lot better location. So that's where we're seeing there's still a lot of competition in these areas, because what you get for your dollar internally goes a lot further.
I mean, what do we say in real estate? Location, 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 right? So even if it is $1 million in the middle of town here and attached, that might be a much more desirable property than $1 million out in Erie, right? So we're really starting to see some of those shifts in the market again, and it's good to see. I mean, it's good to see that all this fiscal and monetary policy is starting to have some effect on the market and bringing us back to reality a little bit, because we can't have 20% appreciation here, right?
No.
We have to have some sort of affordability in these marketplaces here, even if Boulder is very unique.
Although wages are up 5% year over year.
It's a good sign, especially with inflation at 9%. So, but it's a good sign, right? And we're starting to get closer back to reality. So I like that. Well, either way, we're Anthony and Tucker with Land Title. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care, everybody.